So let's pick up where we left off. We left off talking about the adrenal glands. We are going to just skim the surface of the adrenal gland. And if you read in your textbook about adrenal glands, you'll quickly realize that I did just skim the surface. So we're going to just kind of talk about it in general, and I'm going to tell you the name of just 2 hormones that are really important that are made by the adrenal glands. But of course, we're not going to talk about all of them. Okay? Now, adrenal glands are located on top of your kidneys. They're about 1/4 of the size of each kidney. Okay? So since you have 2 kidneys, you have 2 adrenal glands. We separate the adrenal gland into 2 parts, the adrenal cortex and the adrenal medulla. They do 2 completely different things. What does medulla mean? Inside. Cortex means outside. I apologize if that says please clean filter. I don't really know how to get that off. And I'm not, okay, there we go. Went away. Good. All right, medulla means inside. Cortex means outside. The inside of the medulla releases things based off of what the brain tells it to make. That is what we think of as the adrenaline center of our body. Okay? Adrenaline is more of a common name for 2 important neurotransmitters. Okay? The proper name for norepinephrine and norepinephrine. Okay? So you already know, if I tell you your adrenaline has kicked in, what is your body doing? It's trying to go, right? So if somebody scares me, that activates my fight or flight mechanism. My adrenaline kicks in. Okay? That helps me to be able to run away. So if I need to run away, where is my brain, my adrenaline, going to send the most muscles in my legs, right? What is it going to slow down? Not my heart. My heart's got to beat real fast, right, to get my blood going. Digestion, good. That's something that would slow, right? If I'm trying to run to save my life, should my intestines be worried about breaking down what I ate for breakfast that morning? Of course not, right? You can just hang out until I have time to get back for that. Okay, so I think you guys can probably kind of process through that. What is a little harder to understand is what happens in the adrenal cortex, the outside. The outside of your adrenal gland makes a collective group of hormones that we call corticosteroids. Okay? So think back to when we first started talking about this. What did I tell you about steroid hormones? They're lipid-based. They can go straight through the plasma membrane, right? Those are the hormones that once they got to a target cell, they could just jump right in. Okay? What was the bad part about that? Fast to act, but harder to stop the effect. So keep that in your mind as we go over these corticosteroids. Okay? So that's just a group. All right. Now, the first part of these corticosteroids to talk about are called the Mineralocorticoids. So we're still talking about hormones that come from the adrenal cortex. Since this word starts with mineral, right, you should automatically be thinking about electrolytes. If you don't know what electrolytes are, that's any of those little ones we talk about in the body. Electrolytes are things like sodium, potassium, calcium, all of those little ions that float around in your body. There is a different mineralocorticoid to control pretty much all of the electrolytes in your body. So of course we cannot sit here and talk about all of them. I'm going to tell you the name of one mineralocorticoid that we're going to talk about a lot a little later in the semester, and that one is called aldosterone. Aldosterone is one of your major controllers of urine output. Okay, so we've already talked about one of them, right? ADH controlled how much urine that we put out in our body. We reviewed that one a minute ago. Aldosterone does the same thing that ADH does. So we said antidiuretic hormone makes you pee less, makes you keep water. Aldosterone's overall goal is to also does it a different way. Aldosterone forces you to retain extra sodium in your body. So when you go to urinate, you will urinate less sodium. So how does that work? And we'll have to get to the kidneys to give you a really good explanation of this, but pretty much in your body, wherever sodium goes, wherever salt goes, water follows. Right? So if your kidney's blood, extra water is going to follow it and stay in your blood. Okay? what we're going to see when we finally get to the point of talking about the urinary system is anytime you have ADH being secreted, you're also going to secrete aldosterone. Why would I want two hormones to help me control my blood volume? Is blood volume important? Well, yeah, absolutely, right? It helps us to maintain our blood pressure. If our blood pressure gets too low, our heart can't beat, our blood won't go the correct direction. That's really, really a big deal. So we have two hormones that help us control water in our blood, ADH and aldosterone. Okay, does that make sense? Now, just like when we talked about the thyroid, we had that cascade effect. TRH from the hypothalamus caused the pituitary to make TSH. TSH went to the thyroid, told it to make thyroid hormone. We're all good with that one, right? Remember, we had this hormone, this ACTH, right? It was adrenocorticotropic hormone from the pituitary, and we said it goes to the adrenal glands. This hormone is what that ACTH is telling your adrenal glands to make. So you have that same sort of pathway, and we can write it out. So you get CRH from the hypothalamus. That goes to your pituitary, tells your pituitary to make adrenocorticotropic hormone. Adrenocorticotropic hormone goes to the adrenal glands, tells your adrenal glands to make aldosterone. Make sense? Okay, same sort of pathways we've been seeing. We're seeing them over and over and over again. Okay? Done with the adrenal gland. This was just still the adrenal cortex, just the outside. We make mineralocorticoids, and we make glucocorticoids. So lost my highlighter. So when you see this gluco, that should automatically make you think of glucose, sugar. If I can write, there we go. Okay? So if the mineralocorticoids made you control whether or not you kept minerals in your body, glucocorticoids are going to control the levels of glucose you have in your body. Now, this is not your main sugar regulator. We're going to get to those. A lot of you probably know insulin is one of your main sugar regulators. This is one of your helpers. And the main glucocorticoid that you guys would ever come in contact with is cortisol. Okay? Cortisol is also going to be one of those that you get the CRH, tells you to make ACTH. ACTH comes down and tells you to make cortisol, just depending on what the body needs at the time. Cortisol is a hormone that makes you keep higher levels of sugar in your blood. Okay? If you are being told to keep more sugar, that causes the body to tend to want to eat more. It causes the body to tend to store more fat because you always have sugar in your blood. So any fat you eat goes straight into storage. Okay? So you have to kind of understand what do we do with the sugars and the fats in our body. When we eat those things and they go into our blood, anything we have in excess we store. Okay? Your body prefers to use sugar. So if you are producing lots of cortisol and you're keeping the sugar in your blood, then everything else you eat is going to go straight to storage. So what would be the negative effect of high levels of cortisol in your body? You're going to be overweight. You're going to carry your weight. You're going to hold more in your body. Typically, people that have more cortisol carry their weight in the midsection of their body, and that has to do with where you typically have more blood in your body. You've got more blood flowing through the center mass of your body, so that's where you're going to store more fat. Now, what tells the body to make the cortisol is this pathway that I just told you about. But what is the trigger to start the pathway? We don't 100% understand. We do know there's a link between high levels of stress. So if you stress out a lot, your body makes cortisol, you keep sugar in your blood, you store more weight. So if you've ever heard of people stress eating and people that are always stressed out and they keep that larger belly, that is a true effect. Stress can make you gain weight, and this is the hormone that is related to that. But you would meet people who have never been stressed out a day in their life, and they can still have high levels of cortisol at different times of the day. So we do know there is a daily rhythm to it. Everybody makes more cortisol in the morning, less cortisol in the afternoon, okay? And some of you may have felt those effects. If you've anybody that ever exercises much, if you exercise really early in the morning versus late at night, sometimes that gives you a different feel. Can some of you agree with me, right? I know if I get up first thing in the morning, I don't have to eat, and I can exercise. Well, how's that possible? Because if I'm going to go exercise at 7 o'clock, I got to eat something at 5 o'clock, or I'm going to fall out before I exercise at 7. And the difference is early in the morning, your body kicks in that cortisol, kicks up the level of sugar in your blood, and you've got sugar there to use while you're exercising early in the morning versus late at night. Okay? Other than that, anybody that exercises, you've probably felt that. You know, you just wake up and go. Okay? How many of y'all eat breakfast in the morning? That's so sad. Everybody should raise their hands. You should all eat breakfast in the morning, even if it's a banana. Eat something. Kickstart your metabolism. Now, most of you are not overweight, and I don't mean it that way, but if you want to be at your healthiest weight, the best thing you can do is eat when you first wake up in the morning. Wait. I can explain that later, but just preaching to you. All right, so that was the adrenal gland. Inside and inside are different. Inside, adrenaline. Outside, mineralocorticoids, glucocorticoids. Okay? Now we move to the pineal gland. Where is your pineal gland? In your brain, right? The hypothalamus is in the front, the thalamus is on the top, and the pineal gland is sticking out of the back of the thalamus. Your pineal gland is the easiest one to understand. Your pineal gland makes one hormone called melatonin. And I know I always talk about this a little bit in A&PII. Whenever you make melatonin, it makes you sleepy. So what are the triggers that make you sleepy? Darkness, okay? Whenever there's no light, your brain starts making more melatonin, makes you sleepy, right? And I guess I'm privileged, I'm lucky. I've never had to do like overnight shifts or work at night or anything like that. But even just trying to take a nap during the day, even if you're super tired, it's harder to go to sleep in the middle of the day, right? That's because there's light outside, and your brain is telling you it's daylight. You're not supposed to sleep right now, right? But sometimes you can trick this. You can get into a rhythm of sleeping during the day and staying awake at night, and you can trick your brain into those overnight shifts, and they can handle it. I mean, I'm married to a cop, so I mean, yeah, he used to stay up all night long, and then he was fine. He couldn't sleep at night. You know, he just kind of switched himself opposite. There are differences in the level of melatonin we make as we age. As you get older, you make less melatonin. Okay, whenever you are a little hot, right? My pediatrician told me the other day that, she's just made 2. She still needs to be sleeping at least 10 hours a night. Okay? That's what they suggest, because that's the level of melatonin that child makes and needs to sleep that much and still takes naps, right? Some adults will tell you, I can live off 4 hours of sleep. Some people probably can't. I can't. I got to have 8 hours at least, or nobody wants to be around me. But some people can live off of, less hours, and that has to do a lot with the different levels of melatonin we make. And just to throw an aside in there I thought was really neat, I read the other day, I was reading this silly article about animals that hunt at night, like owls and different birds of prey, and their brain is automatically wired with opposite levels of a hormone really similar to melatonin. So they were born with their brain telling them sleep during the day, stay awake at night. I just thought that was interesting. All right. Okay. Now let's talk about a different gland, the pancreas. Anybody remember I told you first day, where's your pancreas? Behind your stomach. It's right here, kind of on the left side of your body. If you can feel your rib cage, go down about 1 inch, and then under there is where your pancreas is going to be located. Your pancreas is an essential organ for digestion. Okay? It also has a hormonal function. It releases antagonistic hormones. So this is the first time we've seen this where the same gland releases 2 different hormones depending on what the body needs to do at the time. It makes these two different hormones that regulate the amount of sugar in your blood. The way it does this is it tells your blood when it needs to put sugar away as in storage and when it needs to bring it out of storage and put it into your blood. Okay? As you read through these things in your textbook, a lot of times you'll see the word glycogen. Now, I'm not going to use it much. Just I know you guys haven't had much of a many metabolism type classes, but just to tell you what this is the way you store glucose. Just so you recognize the word. If you see the word glucose, that means it's just a sugar floating around in your blood when you have glycogen. Okay, you can't turn sugar into fat. That's kind of a myth. It's two different things. Okay, so anytime you see glycogen, that means stored. You see glucose, that means how this works. I think I have a nice little picture. Okay, so the way this works, it depends on pretty much whether you've eaten recently or not. Okay, so let's say I've just eaten breakfast. When I eat, the food goes into my stomach, into my intestines. I pull the good stuff out of the food into my bloodstream. So right after I eat, that is when I have the highest level of sugar, of glucose in my blood. Okay? Immediately after I eat, I'm going to start using some of that sugar for normal metabolic processes, meaning making energy. Okay? But I don't want to leave it in my blood in too high of concentrations. So as soon as you've eaten and you have high levels of glucose in your blood, your pancreas secretes insulin. Insulin tells all the little cells in your blood that it's time for me to take that glucose out of my blood, store it for later as glycogen. Okay? So it's the hormone that tells you to store it for later. Its overall job, a lot of times you'll read, is to lower blood glucose levels. Okay? So you want to keep this steady level of glucose. Let me kind of explain the picture. Okay? So if you all of a sudden you have too high of glucose in your body, you've just eaten, for example. Pancreas secretes insulin. Insulin stimulates you to use the glucose in your cells or turn it into glycogen. That's the fancy way of saying store it for later. That will get you back down to this normal level. Okay? So if we think about it the other way, let's say it's approaching 11:30. I don't have any fresh supply of glucose going into my blood from my intestines. So the level of sugar in my blood is going to decrease. It's got to be kept at a certain level, though, because I need to make energy all the time, right? Otherwise, I would just keel over. Now, I got to have energy. So if it gets too low, my pancreas, the same organ, secretes a different hormone called glucagon. Glucagon stimulates you to break down the glycogen, break down the stored sugar so it can go back into your blood. Okay? Now, we've seen this antagonism before with parathyroid hormone and the calcitonin, right? But these were coming from different glands. This is the only gland in your body that both of the hormones, the antagonistic hormones. Okay? Type 1 and type 2 diabetes differs in, I can't ever keep them straight, but one of them, one type of diabetics cannot make insulin. So if they eat, there's no hormone to tell them to store it, and that's why they can get high blood sugar. So those type of people, they have to take insulin shots just to get the insulin in their body. The type 2 doesn't produce it? Okay, thank you. I couldn't remember. So that means type 1, they make insulin, but they don't have insulin receptors. Nothing for that hormone to bind to do its job. So if somebody's just missing the receptors, giving them insulin, not do anything. So that's your difference in the types. It both has to do with an insulin deficiency, but one of them does not make insulin at all. One of them makes insulin but can't do anything with the insulin. So that's your difference. So one of them, it has to be pretty much controlled with diet. The other one can be controlled with like that. Okay? And that's actually more than just two types. There's type 1 and type 2, and then there's some differences among the types. Now, I don't know enough about it to teach it. I admit that. Okay? Does that make sense? Those are two very, very important hormones. We get toward the end of the semester, and I give you your little put it all together. Right? You got to be able to put it together that these two are really heavily related to digestion. Okay? So I can give you a little warning. You're going to need this later. All right, so we're almost done. Now let's look at the gonads and the placenta. What are gonads? Sex organs, testicles and ovaries, right? Now, both of these are responsible for producing what we call our sex hormones. And these are the ones that you predicted with me. Women make estrogen and progesterone. Men make testosterone. What is the trigger that tells us to produce these? Right? We got to write our little pathway up here. We get GnRH, right? From the what? Okay, GnRH comes from the hypothalamus. That triggers the pituitary to make LH and FSH, right? Mainly the LH that's going to lead to more hormone production. This FSH has more to do with egg and sperm, but we'll go over the details when we get to reproductive. So then LH comes down and tells us to make estrogen, progesterone. I apologize for my handwriting. And testosterone. Okay. So we're going to kind of pretend for a few minutes that women make only estrogen and progesterone and men make only testosterone. That's not really true, but women do make testosterone. Some women make more than others, right? You've all seen those women that were a little manlier than others, had facial hair, things like that. Some men make more estrogen than other men. They're the more feminine men. Okay, we'll hit that when we get to the reproductive system. Okay. All right. So for now, we're going to pretend if you have ovaries and you get the LH signal, you immediately start making estrogen and progesterone. Okay. Overall, estrogen is responsible for maturing and maintaining the integrity of your sex organs. So when you hit puberty, you first get your big surge of estrogen. Your uterine lining starts growing, sloughing off. That's what menstruation is. That's what I mean by maintenance of your sex organs. Okay. Also, the more estrogen you make, the more of the secondary sex characteristics you have. What are secondary characteristics? What does that mean? A collection of fat under the skin, especially in areas like the breast and the hips. Okay, that's when women get their figure, when their breast starts growing. The waist doesn't really shrink. The hips just kind of widen a little bit, and you get more of that hourglass shape. Okay. Progesterone kind of comes along with estrogen, and they kind of do this alternating thing with women. Midway through the month, you get your surge of estrogen. Then as it starts to go down, the progesterone surges up, and they kind of alternate each other. Okay, just to give you an overall, estrogen is the happy hormone. Okay, that's what makes women happy, more sexually active. Progesterone is the mean hormone. Okay, that's what makes women moody and not as nice to be around. Okay, just in general. I'm a woman, so I can say it. If a man was up here teaching it, he couldn't teach it that way. I can. All right. If you have testicles, then you make testosterone. Testosterone is responsible for pretty much anything that happens in the sex organs of a man. Okay, it helps him develop and maintain his sex organs, just like we had with the women. Helps with his secondary sex characteristics. So what are the secondary characteristics going to be with a man? He doesn't make breasts and hips. What does he make? Facial hair, body hair. Okay. The scrotum has to change a little bit as a man goes through puberty. Okay, so we're going to go over all. Y'all laugh at me. Just wait till we get to the reproductive system. Hopefully we will have time to get to the growth and development chapter. That's the last chapter we go over. Placenta makes one hormone. It's called HCG. All right. Yes, if you've ever peed on a pregnancy test, a stick, you were checking for HCG in your urine. It is the hormone that the body starts making. Okay, you don't need to have menstrual cycles anymore because there's something that's trying to attach to your uterus. So, don't get rid of it. Okay, that's the main reason you're making it. Now, it's a big controversy right now. They have a new hormone, a new diet pill. It's a hormone. You can go to the mall of all places, and you can buy HCG in a pill. All right. The FDA is not finished with. Of course, if any of you know me, you know I'm big on exercise and eating right, and that's the best way to be healthy and lose weight. I would not think about it. The woman's body makes HCG when she's pregnant. What is she trying to do? Lose weight or store weight? Anybody been pregnant? What you do when you're pregnant? You store it, right? You don't just shed the pounds off. It's tricking your body into a weird type of metabolism, and it's just my personal opinion. But I think that is down on it, but it's going to be after people start having problems with it. So that's just my recommendation. I wouldn't take HCG. Well, it could, see, but some pregnant women don't get sick. And it is the high levels of the HCG that makes a lot of women have morning sickness. It's just called morning, right? I was sick at night, not in the morning. I was sick, you're sick all day. Yeah. And some people are sick for 9 months, and it's related to this. So, yeah, I think it's very likely you could take those diet pills, and it could make you sick. And that would kill you eventually, eating only 500 calories a day. See, and I admit that I don't know everything about it. This is just me being a science nerd, and what I know about the hormone, I would never take that hormone, personally. I just wouldn't. Mhm. And that's kind of the reasoning in my head that it's going to be a problem. Yeah, it's going to trick your body into losing weight, but eventually your body is going into a storage mode. So I would think it would make you gain weight eventually. That's usually because you're vomiting every day, though. You know, right. And that's very hard for me to, why would any man want to take a hormone that's made in the placenta? I just don't understand it. Do you guys know what happens if a man takes estrogen? They grow breasts, their penis and their scrotum will shrink in size. That's what they do when a man wants to have a sex change operation. They give him high doses of estrogen to make his penis start going away before they try to do the surgery that actually reverses it and puts it inside the body and all that stuff. Yeah, I've seen them. We have one man in the room. He's either very uncomfortable right now. Sorry. Go ahead and ask your question, Michelle. Yeah. To make a fake vagina. Do they have? I don't know. I am a woman. I promise. I know I'm not a tiny little woman, but I am a woman. I wouldn't think it would be the same because it's going to change sensation. But I think that, I shouldn't say this. Somebody will go back and say I said this. But I would think that there's honestly some issue going on in the brain for a man to want that to happen. And I'm not going to say there's something wrong with them, but there's got to be something about normal sex that's not pleasurable to them for them to want to do that. So I think they've already got something kind of cross-wired as far as pleasure during sex and things like that. I'm not saying people that are gay are messed up in the head. Please don't go say I said that. That's not what I said. Okay, y'all. I think that they've already got something switched. So it's not going to just stop it then. I think it's already switched. Well, yeah, no, it can really happen. There are people that are born with both. But you would have to be born with male and female sex organs for your brain to truly be confused like that. Scientifically, your brain is going to choose one or the other, and you may have both sex organs. Usually, right, it depends. That's when you have people that scientist's opinion, is born gay because they're born with their brain feeling one way, with their brain having the one type of hormones and their body demonstrating different sex organs. And most of the times that happens where you don't even necessarily know they have ovaries at first. If they have male organs on the outside, you assume they don't have ovaries. But then that's a man that's making a ton of... Okay, last question, then we can get back on track. Not necessarily they can have... They can have both. And then, I mean, a lot of times it's what the parents choose. And y'all can say all day long, I can't believe a parent would do that. You don't know until you're in those shoes. Wouldn't you want your child to be a boy or a girl? And how would you know which one to pick? Like, it would be horrible. That's like a horrible decision to have to make. I couldn't imagine. Okay? All right. And then we're going to do our chart together. Okay? Hormone secretion by other organs. These are not some that you need to understand in huge detail. I just want you to know what we went over were the main hormone-producing glands in the body. Pretty much any other cell in your body at some point in your life probably makes something that can be considered a hormone. Because what's the definition of a hormone? Something secreted by one gland into the blood that has an effect somewhere else in the body, right? So we could just about say that there's a hormone made by almost everything in your body. Okay? Adipose tissue, what's that? Fat. Fat makes a very important hormone called leptin. Have you ever seen the famous pictures of the famous experiment where they fed the rat leptin? And then you have this picture of this giant rat that can't even walk anymore. He's sitting in a cage looking like Jabba the Hutt. He's so fat, his little front feet are just kind of up here, and he's leaned back. We did those experiments not just because we thought it would be funny. We wanted to prove that somebody that produces more leptin in their body, they're going to be a fatter, a more overweight person. And most of our diet pills are related to controlling overexpressed leptin in people. The people that are genetically overweight, they're typically going to be people that are producing too much leptin. In a normal person, once you've started eating, your fat cells make leptin and tell you you're full. Somebody that has something wrong with that leptin and doesn't make it like they're supposed to, they don't ever feel full. Okay, so that's a really short and dirty version of that. But I just want you to understand, your fat does make a hormone that tells you when you're full, and if it gets out of whack, you're going to be overweight and you're going to overeat no matter what you do. Okay, so there are people that are truly like that. Your heart makes a hormone called atrial natriuretic peptide, and we're going to talk more about this when we get to the kidneys. But see if you can figure it out. Why would your heart make a hormone that affected your kidneys? Does anybody remember? Where do you get the stuff from to make your urine? Your blood. So if I take too much urine, what's it going to do to my blood pressure? Decrease my blood pressure. Will that affect my heart? Yes, your heart's a pretty important organ, so it doesn't rely on just your brain and just your adrenal glands to control it. Your heart even makes a hormone to control your urine output. Okay. Again, your kidneys have another one called renin. Renin helps deal with aldosterone. We'll talk about that later. Too complicated for right now. Your skin makes something called cholecalciferol. I actually said it right. Okay, cholecalciferol. This is the precursor for vitamin D. So have any of you ever heard that you need sunlight to make vitamin D in your body? Okay, that's because your skin cells make this. When the sun hits it, it starts going through the process of turning into vitamin D. Okay, and then the last one, your thymus. Where's your thymus? In your chest. When you're very, very young, your thymus makes a hormone called thymosin. Thymosin makes you develop your T cells. We're going to talk about this when we talk about the immune system. Okay, so just for now, I just want you to kind of have this in the back of your head, and we're going to go over all of these as we get to those parts of the body. Okay, so the last chart in your notes, and this was designed, not by me, I'm not going to take credit for it. It was designed by another teacher to help you. Okay, so what I'm going to do to you is, because I know you don't all have it right now, I'm going to tell you that I want you to work on this tonight, and this is how we're going to open the class on Thursday morning. We're going to go over this. Let me tell you what to do with it, and then we're going to talk a little bit about Chapter 17 today. Okay? What you're going to do with this is put your glands in the very top boxes. Okay? So you have to kind of, is only going to make one hormone, and which gland is going to make all of these hormones. Okay? So obviously your pituitary needs to be put somewhere where you have a bunch, right? Okay? Something like your thymus or your pineal gland only makes one hormone. So those are going to go in these boxes. Okay? Something like your pancreas makes 2 hormones, right? It needs to go in one of these, pancreas, insulin, glucagon, right? Just to give you a few, that's one hormone is affecting the other, or the gland is doing something. You just see these little dashes? That just means all 6 of these are coming from here. Does that make sense? Okay. I'm not going to fill it out for you yet because I want you to sit down and try to play with it. See if you can work it all out. If you can, you will understand this when you're done with it, I promise. Okay? So just try to play with it. If you can't finish it, fine. We're going to work on it together. But see if you can do it. Okay? And then once you get it all filled out, we're going to fill out the, is it hormonally stimulated, humorally stimulated, neurally stimulated. We're going to talk about how they all interact with each other, make a nice, pretty one sheet of paper that summarizes everything. So try to work on that for me, and that's what we're going to do the first of class on Thursday.